It's time to grow up.
Hey everyone, it's Landon and Robbie. Welcome to another awesome episode of the Grow Up Show.
Yeah, today we have my friend Rob Smith. He's been a fantastic advocate for the president. He's a veteran, he's a Black Trump supporter, and he's been out on the road all across America doing what he can to make sure that Trump's elected in 2020. So thank you for coming on, Rob.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks for having me. Really excited.
Yeah, we're so stoked to have you. So one of the things I wanted to talk about was, you and Charlie Kirk have been going around the country, been speaking to young people, and I think what you're doing is really, it's a seismic change that we need in terms of reaching out to young voters. And I think it's been overwhelmingly positive. And I kind of want to focus on the overwhelming positivity. But there is something that I've noticed that I think that, is important that we sort of make sure that it's very clear is not welcome in our movement, in the MAGA movement, because what MAGA has been is love. It's been a loving movement that's inclusive of everybody and is about making America great for everybody. So some far right extremists have shown up at a couple of these events recently, and they've frankly been really hostile towards you simply because you're gay. And I wanted to bring this up just because, from our own point of view, number one, we love you. When I think about you, I don't think of, oh, that's gay Rob. I think that's Rob. He's an incredible person. And the fact you're gay doesn't really come up on my radar. My point of view has always been that, what people do in the privacy of their own bedroom and who they love is their decision. And knowing that you love your partner makes me, I'm happy for you. You're a happier person because of that, and everybody deserves happiness. So, that doesn't take away from my happiness, doesn't take away from my marriage, and to be honest, one of the things that's really confused me about it is if I was a single male, I would kind of secretly be happy that you're gay because it's one less person to compete against. You're fit, you've got, all the boxes checked that a woman could want, so I have to be a little bit kind of secretly happy that you are because it takes one person off the competition checklist,
Right. So as far as what I think about this movement, it's really funny because before this all started, like a couple of weeks before this all started, I was having lunch with a friend of mine, and I was telling him that there are people that do not like the presence of people like me in this whole MAGA movement. They don't like gay people. They don't like Black people. They don't like the Latino people. They don't like all of these people in the MAGA movement. And the most amazing thing about what Trump has done and what this movement has done is that it's brought so many different types of people into the conservative fold. Yeah. And I told my friend, I said that there are people that are out there that do not like all of this. And in 2020, they're going to kind of play this whole back to the basics, super hard right stuff. Yeah. And I was really surprised that it came out in the way that it's come out. Now, for me, it's kind of hard to deal with because it's, on one hand, you want people to be open to say whatever the hell they think, right? Because this is America. But on the other hand, it's so stupid to me from a political perspective because what you have people saying is, we've got this great big movement, let's make it smaller and let's kick all of these people out. And let's reject them in nasty, completely negative ways so that we're the true conservatives and we're going to make this as small as possible. And the thing about when you look at it from an electoral standpoint, you cannot win national elections with a very small subset of the population. This is why the left has been so brilliant over the past 30, 40, 50 years with the identity politics that they're playing. I feel like the type of identity politics they're playing is completely exploding, and we're seeing the implosion of that right now. Yeah. But where the left was smart was they said, we have a lot of different types of people, and we're going to have to bring them together to build this coalition. Yeah. And that is actually the same thing that's happening on the right now, but in, I think, a much more positive way.
We're not demanding, that we stab one minority group in the back to be able to fit the other minority group in. And that's where I think that it differs, is that we're just saying everybody's accepted, and that's my biggest problem with this group is that, number one, just like aside from the morality of it just being terrible, you think about just the rational view of this, nobody can win if they're an anti-gay party, number one. And that's, it's if you go in the suburbs, that's, just an obvious deal. Suburban women love gay people, and they're not going to want to vote for anybody who is bigoted towards gay people. That's just like if you just had an extremely rational view and didn't even get into the immorality of it.
I think that you brought up a really good point, and I think that this is right now where I, as a gay conservative, and a lot of the other gay conservatives, we have to take a strong stand, because what I'm seeing in a lot of this hatred that's coming from the far right, it's not necessarily about me being gay, or maybe it is. I think that a lot of people have being gay confused with what I like to call the LGBT alphabet cult on the left.
Absolutely.
So,
right.
When you bring it back down to it, so whatever the gay agenda was, whatever people said it was basically equality in the eyes of the law, right? Gay marriage, don't ask, don't tell, being repealed. Gays and lesbians can exist just like everybody else without discrimination, with equality. That has been more or less fulfilled, right? But to all of the people that make so much money pushing LGBTQ cult agendas, they needed something else to push. So you have a huge infrastructure of people that are spokespeople for very far left LGBTQ organizations, and so now they're pushing radical transgender ideology. They're pushing the idea that there are 100 genders. They're pushing child drag queens. They're pushing the idea that children as young as 3 and 4 years old can change their gender. And this is the thing that people are truly, I think, upset about. This is where the backlash is truly coming from. And I think that my responsibility as a gay conservative is to stand very strong and very tall against the more radical aspects of the LGBTQ left. Now, it's unfortunate that I'm being lumped in with all of that and bashed by the far right as much as I'm bashed by the far left. But that's okay. I don't really mind all that. And there's nothing that I can say to the far right in condemnation of any of that stuff that I just told you that is going to make them like or accept me, which I'm completely not concerned with. I am completely unconcerned with being liked or accepted by anybody, least of all the very far right. But I think that there is a real opportunity here, and that's a responsibility that I have to stand as firm as possible against all of this stuff.
Absolutely.
Because I think that it is inciting a backlash against normal, hardworking gay and lesbian Americans, and I fear where these people are taking that community. I do not think that it is to a good place. I think that if that becomes mainstreamed and that becomes normalized in the eyes of that far left gay community, and this is what everybody thinks that mainstream gays and lesbians are like, it's going to be a really big problem. And things like that are going to lead to people trying to overturn marriage equality and to try to reinstate a ban on gays in the military.
I think that this tantrum that they're having is a direct result of the fact that they have come to realize that we won. This is our party now, and it will be for a very long time. And this is just it's a tantrum, because they can't deal with the fact that we won. And this will be a big tent party.
Yeah. You know what? It has to be a big tent party because we cannot survive. The Republicans cannot survive as a national party unless it is a big tent party. And you see a lot of this happening with the black push, with the push to get black voters for Trump. I think that you will start seeing it with being more accepting of different minority groups. But in general, the thing about it is it's a big tent for all Americans. And that is where we have to coalesce, and that is where we have to find our identities. We have to find our identities in being Americans.
Right. Yeah, I think that it's going back to what you just said, it's non-negotiable for Republicans or conservatives or even anybody in the middle, to not embrace, gays at this point and their very important role. And I'm so happy that we have people like you in this movement that are calling out the radical left, the agenda. Actually, when we met you, we were talking like briefly before you went up to speak at Blexit. You guys were both speaking there. And I thought it was so cool of you that at the time, nobody in the conservative movement was talking about this yet. But like you recognized, seeing 10 steps ahead, where this movement is going. And people want to sit here and talk about, till the cows come home, whether gay's right or not, or whether they believe in it. We can't afford that at all. There's child drag queens. You went up there on that stage and you talked about that. And that was a very brave thing to do, because people, I don't think, were even aware that that was happening. So I want you to talk about, the distinction there, because I think that you're not alone in this. It's not just you and Dave Rubin and a few others. There's plenty. Yes.
All the gay conservatives are upset about the child drag queens. They're upset about the sexualization of kids being brought to pride parades.
Absolutely we are. And here's the thing, and there's a crucial distinction that I think needs to be made here, that it's not just gay conservatives, right? We are just the gay ones that are emboldened to stand up and say it. I get so many emails, Facebook messages, DMs from gays that are not even conservative, that are not even Trump supporters. These people may hate Trump with the heat of 1,000 suns. But when I say that we can't stand for child drag queens, when I say that we cannot stand for the sexualization of children, when I say these things, they're like, man, I can connect with that, because if I go to my gay liberal friends and I say any of these things, I will be excommunicated. And the reason why I call the LGBT alphabet soup left a cult is because they engage in cult-like tactics. So if any of the people on the left were to stand up and say this, they would be excommunicated, they would be smeared, they would be called Republicans, they would be called Trump supporters, they would lose friends, all the things that have happened to me. So when you have the Dave Rubins and me's and all the other gay conservatives saying this, we're not only speaking for all conservatives and gay conservatives, but we're speaking for the gays and lesbians on the left that are not here for any of this either. They have major problems with it. They are just so afraid to speak up about it because they're afraid of being knocked out. Because what the left does right now is they are making the hard left is making their circle so small that everybody who is not woke enough, who is not quote unquote progressive enough, who is whatever, is going to be kicked out. And the hard left and the hard right are very similar in those ways, because the tactics that we're seeing from the hard right now are very reminiscent of the tactics that we're seeing from the hard left.
They deserve each other.
You are not as holy as us. You are not as godly as us. You're not as moral as us. Therefore, you cannot be in our movement. Yeah. It's the same thing. The only difference is the people on the right, at least they worship God. Thank God for that. Because the people on the left don't worship anything. Politics is their religion. Yeah. Right. But these tactics are the same on both sides.
Right. I mean, extremism is extremism. One question I have is, the left, they're so consumed with identity politics and race and, homosexuality and the intersectionality of both. When you've been touring the country, talking to so many different people, what have you experienced as far as racism and homophobia, and where is it coming from? What kind of people are giving you this kind of heat?
I mean, to tell you the truth, I was really shocked because I came out as America's favorite Black gay Republican about a year and a half ago. And I didn't really start seeing any hardcore racism and homophobia until a lot of this hard right stuff came out. But what I see in terms of the kids that I talk to when I go to the college lectures or when I'm doing Turning Point USA events, what I see is I think that people want to be open to having different conversations without entirely all the time being shut down with you're a racist or you're sexist or you're homophobic or you're whatever. Because I've had good faith conversations with young people that are Christian conservatives, and they will say, you know what, based on what I believe, I don't either disagree with you or don't agree with you, however they say it, but they'll say, I still believe in your right as an American to live the life that you want to, and that's what we want for all Americans. And those are the kinds of conversations that I have. I have good faith conversations. And I think a lot of times as well, when you have what I like to call the conservative police, and make no mistake, these people are all the conservative police. You're not as conservative as me. I'm the top conservative, blah, blah, blah. There is a big, fat center out there. Yeah. And I've got glass for saying this as well. There's a big, fat center out there that would be more open to conservative ideas and conservative beliefs that are not so, they're not, you're not banging people over the head with it, and you're not telling them that they're less holy or less moral.
Yep.
Right.
People in the middle don't want to be ruled by a theocracy, and that's something that we've gotten a lot better at on the Republican side. But there has to be sort of a conversation between those people who think they're the conservative police and the rest of us going, hey, these people in the center are ready to come to us. We just need to make them feel comfortable in knowing that this is not a theocracy run off of, just strictly religious beliefs. This is, a side that believes in innate morality and innate goodness and wants to make life better for everybody.
Exactly, because if you made a really good point about the theocracy thing, because if you say that, look, I'm a Christian, this is, if you say that this can only be for Christians that we deem to be holy enough, you're leaving out so many people. Like, there are people that this is not anything that I believe in. There are people that are atheists. There are people that are Muslims. There are people that are Jewish. There are people that have all different kinds of religion that have more conservative leaning beliefs and that also happen to be supporters of the president. So what you're trying to say is that these people don't believe what you believe, so you don't think that they have a place in here. I just don't think that that's what America is about. Nope. We're not a theocracy.
No, absolutely.
So I think that kind of language is very destructive, and I think that it turns the people that we need off in terms of being the voting bloc. Now, if you want to talk about morality and Christian lifestyles and all of that other stuff, then you can take that. You know what I mean? You can you can believe in that and you can take that. But it's a really slippery slope when you start connecting that too hardcore to who can or cannot support an idea of politics or a political candidate.
So let me ask you this, Rob. If you had 2 minutes to make the case to any minority or gay person who is kind of on the fence in the center or maybe leans left a little bit, if you had to make the case to them to vote Republican in 2020 in 2 minutes or less, what would that look like?
The case in 2 minutes or less, and for anybody who is, thinking about voting for Trump in 2020 or thinking about maybe making the switch, look at how your life is. Don't look at Twitter. Don't look at the mainstream media. Look at how your life is. Are you making more money? Yes or no? Is your life better? Yes or no? First of all, think about the ideas. Do you fall in line with a lot of these policies when it comes to illegal immigration? Do you fall in line with a lot of these policies when it comes to the economy? Do you see real things that are impacting your life in a positive way actually being done? And if you do see that, then that is the case to vote Republican. That is the case to vote for Trump in 2020. If for whatever reason you're not winning, and you think that socialism is the answer, or if you think that this idea of socialism that is being pushed by Bernie Sanders and AOC is where you want to go, and that's the way you want to see our country go, like, if you want to see us in bread lines, if you want to see us like Venezuela eating out of the garbage, like, if you want to see all that stuff for America, by all means, vote for these people, because that is what they will turn this country into. If you want freedom, if you want a strong border, if you want a robust economy, if you want to vote on policies, then the Republican Party is the place for you to vote in 2020. I don't know how else the vote could go.
Yeah, some people might think you're being dramatic about the socialism side of this, but as the son of a Cuban refugee, I can tell you, you're not being dramatic about the socialism. In Cuba, when Castro came to power, it was billed as a revolution, the same type of revolution that Bernie talks about and Elizabeth Warren talks about. they sell this revolution to the people to get a plurality of people on their side in within their ideological group. And if they actually get any power, they do what Castro did. They enrich themselves and they end up widening the income inequality. And the good people like my family, who owned a house, a car, and a small family farm that only the family worked on, they lost everything. They had everything taken from them. So that's not out of question. That's not some crazy idea. Bernie himself praised Castro, praised Cuba, praised the USSR. So the idea that we could turn that direction is not wild. This is, he likes what has happened in these other places.
This is literally what they're pushing. And look at Bernie Sanders. Look at when somebody called him on the socialist stuff and they said, oh, well, you know what? You did all this and you're a millionaire. And Bernie Sanders says, well, if you write a couple best-selling books, you can be a millionaire too. Yeah. That right then and there. Like, that is it. That is their vision in a nutshell. AOC thinks that, by the way, her $175,000 salary that is being paid for with all of our taxpayer dollars is not enough. So one of the few things that she lobbied for is an increase in that salary. She has $400 haircuts, you know what I mean? So I feel bad because I know people, and I bring them up all the time. My best friend in the world is practically a socialist. And there are people that believe in this stuff because they are not winning. And they think that by going this route, it is going to bring prosperity to them. The only thing that brings prosperity to Americans and to the individual is capitalism, is entrepreneurship, is taking all of this stuff into your own hands. And if you don't know about all of this stuff, you need to read it and you need to educate yourself about it. I make no bones about, I think with a lot of Black conservatives, a lot of us are sort of criticized. And a lot of people criticize me. They said, oh, well, Rob Smith, he comes from family money, or he comes from a trust fund, or he comes from a wealthy Republican family, whatever. I come from none of that stuff. And, I come from a very working class background in Akron, Ohio. I went to the military to serve my country, to go to college, to do all these different things. And so when I sit here and tell people about bootstrapping, and when I tell them about entrepreneurship and capitalism, it's because these are all lessons that I've learned the hard way. Yeah. I'm not sitting on Capitol Hill making $175,000 a year telling people that it's bad to have millionaires and billionaires. Yeah. To me, it's ridiculous, and I can't even believe that people are falling for it to the level that they are.
Yeah, I was going to say, too, with the socialism, I have people ask me about that, too, that, what about my student loan debt? What about this? These people are making these promises, right? Writing these checks they can't cash. And I say, well, look at action. Like, look at Bernie Sanders. Look at, what's her name? They have these mansions and Pelosi. I mean, the list goes on of how many of these big Democratic leaders have these, it's a do as I say, not as I do mentality, right?
They're living the lifestyle.
So basically you're just going to see it on a bigger scale. So, and that's what the problem is when you give these people the power, they're going to do differently for themselves as they want for you. So if you look at these liberal cities, how are these people living? And how are their leaders living? It's only going to get astronomically worse when you empower somebody like that isn't, living example. So I wanted to ask you, like with Trump, we have record Black unemployment. What other things is Trump doing specifically for the Black community?
It's a good question, and I think the record low Black unemployment, it's a real thing, but it's kind of become an easy talking point. But I really want to burrow down into the First Step Act. So the First Step Act was the most comprehensive criminal justice reform in a generation. This did not get passed in the Obama year, it got passed during the Trump year. Basically, over 3,000 prisoners that were serving 20, 25, 30 years for nonviolent offenses were released under the First Step Act. 91% of these people were African American. Now, these are people that are able to come into a very strong economy. And there was a story that came out of Detroit, in particular, where there are so many jobs in Detroit available right now that local business owners were renegotiating some of their ideas in their heads about hiring ex-convicts because there were so many things going on. Yeah. So when you talk to somebody like Seth Frazier, who had served, I believe, 25 years for a nonviolent offense and is free under the First Step Act, and you hear that story, that's a very real thing. Now, when you shift this over to historically Black colleges and universities, which are continually underfunded and generally just in a lot of trouble, now the Trump administration released a ban on being funded for faith-based HBCUs. Yeah. So now these faith-based HBCUs are able to get millions more dollars in grants and funding than they were able to during the Obama administration. Yeah. So those are two things in particular that I think are really important to African Americans. But when you just look at overall, when you look at things that are being done for all Americans, when you look at 6.9 million jobs being created since this administration took office, when you see that the Dow has hit, I believe, records. The Dow has hit records 26 times during this administration. And so when you look at things like that, and when you see the economy being so strong and so robust for people of all colors, but especially, particularly for African Americans, yeah, that is where you make the case. And I think that right now, the Democrats and people on the left cannot make a case that anything that they will do will be better for the actual real lives of African Americans or any Americans. Absolutely. So we've got impeachment stuff. We've got things that really don't matter. And so I think that when you talk about African Americans in the Black vote in the Trump administration, you have to point to actually what's happened.
They have distractions. That's all they have. One thing I wanted to get into, because I feel like it's another underrated side of one of the attractive, points with Trump for voters is, the anti-war people. Trump has been so controlled when it comes to taking action with the military. He's been very careful not to be coaxed by the media into doing things that he doesn't believe in. And by virtue of that, has saved a lot of American lives by not jumping into wars where we don't really belong. Yourself as a military vet, how do you feel about how he's approached war?
I mean, I think that I'm very happy with how he's approached a lot of this stuff. It's really funny whenever there's some sort of conflict that comes up, you want to look at who are the ones that are loudest in terms of pushing for war. It's always left, these neocons, and it's always swampy conservatives on the right. You have to realize how many neocons on the left and swampy conservatives have vested financial interest in forever war. Yep. And I think that's a lot of people really don't burrow down into that. And so what I like is that he is not trying to put American troops in harm's way where we don't need to be in harm's way. We are hopefully winding down these forever wars. You know what I mean? That we've been in Afghanistan since 2001. We've been in Iraq since 2003. There are entire generations that have come of age that have known nothing but America being in war. And I think that this is a particularly good way for any president to look at these international conflicts, but particularly for a Republican president to look at international conflicts and potential war in a way that is meant to not serve, stakes and financial interests in forever war, but to actually protect soldiers and to put their lives first. Yeah. It's really, really heartening to me. And when I talk to a lot of fellow soldiers, either people that I served with or, some of the people that come into Fox News every once in a while when we're there at the same time, the sense that I get is that people are very happy about this and they feel the same way that I do.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm really happy that we're not, in another war. I mean, we would be undoubtedly if a Democrat was in office at this point.
We'd be at war with Russia, absolutely.
Wow, probably, yeah. So you touched on something about your experiences and things that have shaped your mentality, growth mindset. Can you share with us? Was there a defining experience, or perhaps time in your life that led to your growth or a grow up moment for you?
Well, what, to tell you the truth, I have two pretty big grow up moments. My first grow up moment was the military. And, I talk about this a lot, but it taught me focus. It taught me discipline. It taught me an integrity that I have not gotten from anything else since the military. These are rules and things that I've got that I carry with me to this day. And they actually helped me through this world that we're all living in right now. When you are a well-known media influencer, political influencer, whatever you want to call it, you will meet a lot of people. And you will meet a lot of people that are doing things for the right reasons and the wrong reasons. You will meet people that have integrity. You will meet people that have a stunning lack of integrity. And so those rules that I learned in the military have helped me negotiate this transition. And I think my second grow up moment, honestly, was coming out as America's favorite Black gay Republican about a year and a half ago. This has not been an easy road. It has not been an easy road, but I think that I gained so much more than I lost, because what I gained was myself, what I gained was my voice, what I gained was the confidence enough to stand up for what I really believe, regardless of the people that will try to tear you down or belittle you or do whatever. And that's a real grow-up moment, because as you move into somebody that is a public figure, there are going to be a lot of people who want to turn you into their idea of what they think you should be. And when you have that core, you have that integrity, you have to stick with that, and you have to have your own compass. And you can't let other people guide you astray, because they will.
Right. What would you say to a young conservative that is afraid to come out, as gay or conservative, or as a gay conservative with their beliefs? What advice would you have for them?
Well, for any conservative that's afraid of coming out, I guess my advice to you is just think long and hard, because you will lose friends. It will be difficult. You will have a lot of pushback. And you have to think about whether or not you're really, truly ready to deal with that. When I came out, I made the decision that I was just like, bring it on. Everybody may not be so prepared to deal with that. So when you decide that you're prepared to deal with all of that, then just go at it full force. Say what you believe, and never back down or water down your beliefs based on the pressure that you get from people that may be fans of you, or maybe following you, or maybe whatever. So you just have to really stand up for what you believe in.
Yeah, and with that said, there's a real price to pay for being authentic, whether you're coming out as a conservative or gay, or just speaking
Whatever
your
it
truth.
is.
And we've definitely experienced that in our personal lives, and found out who our real friends are. And
I would argue it's valuable. I would argue,
absolutely.
I would actually myself, I would tell any one of those people to take the leap, because I'd rather live a life knowing who my real friends are, and if they really do care about me as a person, or if they, if I'm just some sort of social notch for them that checks the box, and I think coming out as Republican really clarified a lot of things for me about who my real friends are, who my kids' real friends are, and same thing for my wife, it did the same thing for her, who her real friends are. And I think living authentically is the only way to live. We only have one life, and you can end up on your deathbed and be proud that you were always who you truly are, and that you always stuck to your, your inner truth and your convictions, or you can be on that bed regretting that you had to hide a big part of yourself. And this isn't just about being Republican, coming out Republican. This is just sort of about living unapologetically. That's another reason why I think that, it's nobody's place to tell another person that, being gay is, against God's will or whatever it is. It's number one, if you truly believe that, let God deal with it.
That's the whole thing, yeah.
But it's nobody's place to do that, because we only have one life here. And we need to ultimately live our life in a manner that, as long as we're not hurting anybody else and we're not doing anything illegal, we need to live our lives in a way that's going to be true to who we are.
I mean, with all the people that have kind of come out against me or whatever for saying I'm a gay Christian or whatever, I guess how I react to it is, if if that is how God will judge me, that is his decision. That is not yours. That is not your place to say. And it's not your place to dictate what kind of relationship I have with God. It's not your place to sit in judgment of me. It's not your place to do any of these things. And if you think it's fine. It's a free country. But people feel very emboldened to say these things. And I guess that, I haven't been pushing back enough, or maybe I should push back more. But my whole thing is what? Just live and let live. If I will be judged for this, I will be judged by him. Not by anybody on YouTube, not by anybody that has a podcast, not by anybody that has a nationally syndicated show. I will be judged by him and nobody else.
Absolutely. And there's not one person that can throw the stone that isn't also have a porn addiction or an alcohol addiction or cheating on their wife. So
that's what
I
gets
don't want
me,
to
honestly.
I don't want to hear the judgment from anybody. And that's really what I bring up when somebody's like, well, I don't believe in homosexual or whatever. Anytime anybody touches on that with me, I just say, you know what?
There's something in everybody's life.
There really is.
That's one of the things I will say very directly that turned me off back in 2008 to the Republican Party was that I felt like there was a sort of code of judgment. And that code of judgment has largely left the party now, and I don't want to see it return in any shape or form because, it was this sort of religious judgment thing that really turned me off, especially when you think about the hypocrisy. Yeah. When you think about the fact that everybody has something in their life that is, at some point in their life has been a vice or has been a sin or whatever, and it's honestly, that's... If you believe in that,
you could pass judgment on.
Yeah, that you could pass judgment on, and if you believe in that, it shouldn't be anybody else's place to intervene. It should be between you and God. So that's all I'll say about it.
No, exactly. You guys said it perfectly. I think that where we are right now as a party is so vastly different from where we are in 2008, and I think that this is where the party needs to continue. I think that in 2024, you're going to see a lot of candidates for president come out on the Republican side. It'll be a version of what's going on with the Democrats right now, and we're going to see some of these hard far right candidates come out as well. And they're going to be saying a lot of the things that the people that are slamming me online are saying right now. And I think that will really be the litmus test for where the party is. Yeah. If you weed that element out of the party, they're not going to make it to the primaries. Period.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, they'll lose, definitely. I mean, I don't think that's even a question. What I would say, too, I wanted to bring this up, is Emerson, which is an A-rated polling firm, had a poll come out this week that showed 34% of Black Americans are supportive of President Trump. Now, a lot of people might not be familiar, and they might think that 34% doesn't sound very good. Well, I'll put it this way. If the president wins even 20% of the black vote, Democrats are in for a total catastrophic loss in 2020. Yeah. If he gets 34%, it'll be historic, no coming back from it loss for Democrats, and will probably forever change the two parties' alignment for the next 100 years. So my question to you, Rob, being out there talking to people, is number one, what do you think is shifting the tide here towards supporting the president? And number two, what can your average voter who wants to make sure that support turns into a vote in 2020, what can they do to help facilitate it going from not just supporting, but to voting?
So based on what I've seen, even I want to go back to what you guys said about like if Trump got 30, 40%, if Trump got 12% of the black vote, it destroys Democrats as a national party. And I think that people don't realize how much of the black vote Democrats are actually dependent on. And this is upwards of 90%. So even if you had 12 to 15% of the black vote, the Democrats would be done. I think that what's shifting is a lot of the things that I talked to you about, like the First Step Act, like the unemployment, like the ban on faith-based funding for HBCUs being lifted. Yep. I think people are seeing actual results. And I think that, honestly, more and more black people being emboldened about saying that they are Trump supporters, that really does change the tide. Because there's so much about politics and how it operates on a national level, to where if I'm a Black voter and maybe I'm low information and I see all of these Black faces on cable news or whatever, and it's like bashing Trump, bashing Trump over and over and over again, I'm going to feel that that is how I'm supposed to think, and I'm not going to want to buck against the trend. But when you see people like, like Candace Owens coming out, when you see people like me, when you see people like King Face, when you see people like Brandon Tatum and David Harris Jr., and all of these Black conservatives that have come out, build huge platforms, and are unapologetic about our support. And when you combine that with the Black Voices for Trump coalition, where you have people coming out on a national level trying to attract an African-American voter that the Republican Party hasn't really reached out to in probably years at this point. That is going to be the difference. And I think that for all of us in the conservative movement, to answer your second question, the way we can help facilitate that conversation is to focus on the facts. I mean, what I try to avoid doing, and what I recommend all conservatives to do, is to try not to hop in defense mode if Trump steps in it on Twitter, or if Trump says something off the cuff at a rally, and then it ignites all of the crazy, hard left people who are like, this is an example that he's a grand wizard, he's a king here, he's whatever. Like, try not to hop into defense mode if any of that stuff happens, because that's so here today, gone tomorrow. It's going to the news cycle. I would say focus on the facts. The facts are real. The facts actually matter to people's lives. And the facts are changing people's lives. So if you want to make the case for this administration to an African-American voter, you have to point to the results. And the results are there.
Absolutely. I have one last question for you. If you had to make a prediction who Trump is going to end up running against in 2020, who would it be, and what is the core issue?
I've been saying all along, even when it was looking rough for old Sleepy Joe, I do believe Joe Biden's going to be the Democratic nominee, and I'll tell you why. The road to the Democratic nomination goes through African American voters out. And he will get these voters. He is blowing all of the other competitors out of the water among African American voters in the Southern Super Tuesday states. These are the people that are going to lead him to the nomination. I do believe that it's going to be Joe Biden against Donald Trump. And I do believe that the reason why these voters are going to vote for him to get the nomination is because they feel comfortable that he had such a close connection. He was the vice president for the first African American president in American history. There's that, but also I think that there is a rejection that is starting to happen among actual voters to the very far left wing of this party. I think that Bernie Sanders and the Elizabeth Warren, I think that crowd is starting to be rejected by a lot of the more moderate voters. These are the people that are going to vote for Joe Biden. Period.
Oh yeah, what do you think the key
issue
in 2020 is going to be?
What is going to be the core issue? The core issue is going to be illegal immigration, just like it was in 2016. I think we're not hearing about illegal immigration a whole lot right now, but when the campaign decides to start really honing in on that, I think it's going to be the core issue. And there's a very strong case to be made for African American voters that unchecked illegal immigration and free stuff for illegal immigrants is probably not the best move for African Americans. And I think that once they start making that case to Black voter, that's going to be it. So I think it's going to be the defining issue.
Yeah, they just need to make a commercial that takes all of the facts about the factories where they did the big ICE raids and they deported all of those people, and then give the statistics on the number of African Americans who then filled those jobs once those illegal immigrants were gone.
And I think that'd be a good look.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Rob.
Thank you,
You're
Rob.
awesome,
We love you.
and we love you.
And everybody can reach out to me on social media at Rob Smith Online, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Awesome. And I'm sure they'll see you on TV as part of the 2020 campaign.
I'm going to be all over Fox News next year, so it'll be fun.
Awesome.
America's favorite gay Black Republican.
Yep.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
It's time to grow up.